Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, namaste from New Delhi.
12:30 p.m. here in London, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half an hour, Rishi Sunak's Rwanda legislation passes Britain's Parliament, more UK military support for Ukraine, and will go live to Kiev. First, the headlines.
5 people died trying to cross the English Channel from France hours after Britain passes the bill to deport migrants to Rwanda. Top UN officials call Sunak to reconsider plan, citing fears of refugee protection. After prosecutors charged Donald Trump of breaking the law and corrupting the 2016 presidential race in the hush money trial, the judge to consider gag order violations in the case today. German police arrest a European Parliament staffer on suspicion of espionage in China. Berlin calls it potential attack on EU democracy. Beijing rejects it as hype. And campaigning for the second phase of India's elections peaks as leaders of various political parties crisscross different territories. First news from the United States. The first criminal hush money trial of former American President Donald Trump began on Monday. The prosecutors plan to prove that Trump falsified business records, allegedly as part of a scheme to suppress negative stories about him during the 2016 presidential campaign. On Tuesday, the judge is set to review prosecutors' request to fine Trump for breaching a gag order that prevents him from talking publicly about certain people involved in the case. While a guilty verdict would not prevent Trump from assuming office, it could negatively impact his candidacy. DD India's William Denslow has more details from New York on this ongoing hush money trial.
Entering the courthouse on Monday, Donald Trump once again railed against this case and this trial that he faces. He has described it as election interference, all in an effort to hurt his chances of regaining the White House come November. Monday saw opening statements in this trial. We heard from prosecutor Matthew Colangelo, who alleges that Donald Trump committed election fraud, pure and simple. The prosecution had painted a narrative that Donald Trump sought to dampen potentially politically damaging stories for making it public in the lead up to the 2016 election. The prosecution alleged that a reason why he used a fixer to pay the porn star Stormy Daniels $130,000 as a hush money payment was to make it as hard as possible for that payment to be traced. We heard from Todd Blanche, the defense lawyer representing Donald Trump, during opening statements that said that the prosecution laid out a neat narrative. However, he said it simply wasn't true. He went on to argue that Donald Trump committed no crimes. He even said that any efforts to try and influence an election, there is nothing wrong with that. He said simply that is what democracy is. We've also had the first witness take the stand during this trial. That is David Pecker, who owned the firm that controls the National Enquirer. That's a media organisation accused of catching and killing potentially politically harmful stories about Donald Trump in the lead up to the 2016 elections. He's expected back on the witness stand Tuesday. We're also expecting a hearing on Tuesday about Donald Trump's gag order that prosecutors allege he has been violating. They say such violations could result in fines or even up to 30 days behind bars. Judge Juan Machan put that gag order in place in an effort to stop Donald Trump from potentially attacking witnesses during this trial. Donald Trump says it is unconstitutional and has called for that gag order to be dropped. William Denslow in New York reporting for DD India.
On to the UK now. The British Parliament finally passed the Rwanda asylum law on Monday, with PM Sunak determined to send the flights come what may. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, the British PM hoping to turn his electoral fortunes with this move?
Here's Tanvi, and Rishi Sunak says that asylum seekers will be sent to Rwanda from July after the UK Parliament passed that Rwanda asylum bill overnight UK time. The UK government says it has booked commercial charter planes and trained staff to take migrants to Rwanda in the hope the policy will boost the Conservative Party's dipping fortunes before an election expected later this year.
The success of this deterrent doesn't rest on one flight alone. It rests on the relentless, continual process of successfully and permanently removing people to Rwanda with a regular rhythm of multiple flights every month over the summer and beyond until the boats are stopped.
Now, this policy was originally formulated 2 years ago and agreed with Rwanda. It would see any asylum seeker arriving illegally in Britain potentially being sent to Rwanda under a scheme the government says will deter English Channel crossings. The legislation is expected to receive royal assent from King Charles later this week and then becomes law. DD India's Julia Chapman reports.
Rishi Sunak says this law marks a fundamental change in the global equation on migration. It was passed by lawmakers after a long process of so-called ping-pong, where legislation goes back and forth between the lower and upper houses of Parliament. The House of Lords, the upper chamber, had tried to make amendments to the bill, which were all ultimately struck down by the House of Commons. The law will allow the government to deport anyone who arrives in the UK illegally, often on small boats across the English Channel. They would be sent to Rwanda for processing and would have no legal right to return to the UK. Critics have called the policy cruel and a potential breach of international law. In its original form, it was deemed unlawful by the UK Supreme Court, which ruled that the risk was too high that Rwanda could send migrants back to their countries of origin or other unsafe places. The new legislation seeks to circumvent those concerns by designating Rwanda a safe country and compelling courts to disregard rules that could block deportations. A treaty has also been signed with Rwanda, which the government says will prevent onward deportations. The opposition Labour Party has vowed to repeal the law if it takes power at the upcoming general election, which it is expected to do. It's called the plan an extortionately expensive gimmick. That's a reference to the cost of flying asylum seekers to Rwanda and the payments being made to the country in exchange for taking in migrants. The first plane is expected to take off no sooner than 10 weeks from now. Prime Minister Sunak says he'll consider his policy successful when the boats carrying migrants have been stopped. But its effectiveness as a deterrent will likely take several months to measure. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
Well, just hours after the British Prime Minister's latest effort to send migrants to Rwanda won approval from Parliament, at least 5 migrants, including a 7-year-old girl, lost their lives while attempting to cross the English Channel from France to Britain. Nearly 112 migrants were crammed into a small boat. When the chaos ensued, French emergency services rescued nearly 47 migrants, but more than 50 decided to remain on the boat and try and continue their journey towards Britain. In a phone call, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has thanked UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for the largest ever defence support package from Britain for Ukraine. Rishi Sunak is now visiting Poland, where he's set to unveil the $617 million package. The UK is also vowing to send its largest ever single package of equipment, including over 1,600 missiles for Ukraine. And DD India's Megumi Lim joins us live now from Kiev with more on this. Megumi, what has been the reaction from Kiev to this latest round of support announced by the UK?
Well, this has, of course, been great news for Ukraine, especially for Ukrainian troops who have been for months now trying to repel Russian forces, trying to hold the front lines, all the while facing critical shortages of weapons and ammunition. And as you said, President Zelensky thanked Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for the additional Storm Shadows, which have long-range capabilities and will be useful to target Russian logistic lines, and also for the armored vehicles and ammunition, which are all very badly needed on the battlefield. Now, this is also good news because over the weekend, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the long-delayed funding bill for Ukraine worth $60 billion. And so these two packages put together will really allow Ukrainian troops to let out a sigh of relief, knowing that replenishment is on its way. And U.S. officials have said that once the funding bill for Ukraine gets its final approval, which is expected to happen this week, the first batch of military aid is expected to arrive in Ukraine within days.
And what do Ukraine's repeated requests for more assistance from its allies say about the current state of the conflict?
Well, the frontline situation remains dire as Ukrainian troops waited for additional military aid to get approved and also delivered. Russian forces have been inching forward. They have taken advantage of this gap in military aid for Ukraine, as Ukraine faced, as I mentioned earlier, critical shortages of weapons and ammunition. And they are expected to intensify their attacks before this additional military aid finally arrives to Ukraine. And President Zelensky has warned that Russian forces may even try to mount an early major offensive. Now, the latest, according to the Ukrainian military, is that there are around 20,000 to 25,000 Russian troops trying to storm the eastern city of Chasiv Yar. Now, Chasiv Yar is a strategic city located on higher ground. If Russian forces manage to capture Chasiv Yar, it would give them a strategic advantage in trying to press forward towards other strategic cities like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And Ukrainian officials have warned that Russian forces are trying to seize Chasiv Yar before May 9th, which is when Russia will celebrate Victory Day.
Megamilim in Kiev, thank you. And the US Senate is set to vote on Tuesday for that massive $95 billion aid package in military assistance to Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan. The much-awaited bill passed by the US House of Representatives on April the 20th allocates around $61 billion to Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel and $8 billion to the Asia-Pacific, including Taiwan. After it passes the Senate, the bill will land on President Joe Biden's desk for his approval. A delegation of US representatives has been visiting Kiev to promote support for Ukraine. Both Republican and Democrat representatives spoke to the media and paid respects at the Memory Wall of Fallen Defenders of Ukraine after meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky.
As we discussed with the President, U.S. assistance in Ukraine is in good hands. I am confident that with the stringent oversight and accountability measures in place to ensure that our aid is not subject to fraud, corruption, or diversion. And once on the battlefield, we know that U.S.-provided weapons will be put to good use.
What we have here is an indication we can get the job done. But I always have felt that the support for Ukraine was there, it was strong. It was really just working its way through a Congress that is having difficulty even sometimes getting its own budget on time.
Russian forces have claimed control over the Novomykhailivka region of Ukraine, Moscow's second territorial claim in 2 days. Now, Ukraine is disputing Russia's latest claim, insisting that Kiev very much still holds that settlement and is engaged in ongoing efforts to retain it. Russia had previously claimed to have captured the Bodanivka village northeast of Chasiv Yar on Sunday. The United States has accused Hamas of changing its demands in the ceasefire and hostage release negotiations with Israel amid escalating tensions. US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller says Hamas is more interested in a full-scale regional war than a peace agreement. The talks are being mediated by Qatar and Egypt.
The reason the Secretary made the comments he did on Friday when he spoke to this at the meeting of the G7 foreign ministers is what you have seen over the past few weeks is Hamas move the goalposts. There are demands that they have made. Israel has moved some way to meeting those demands, and Hamas has then changed their demands. And so it certainly does seem like Hamas is more interested in a full-scale regional war.
During a visit to Kyrgyzstan, British Foreign Secretary David Cameron says he's seeking to highlight the common interests of the two nations. David Cameron says the purpose of his visit is to strengthen and bring elevated bilateral cooperation, particularly over climate change, trade, education and security. Before arriving in Central Asia, David Cameron visited Israel, where he reiterated his message that Britain wants the fighting to stop and hostages to be released. Germany has arrested a European parliamentarian aide on suspicion of spying for China. The police are calling it an especially severe case. The aide to a far-right German politician has been accused of giving the Chinese intelligence services information about negotiations and decisions made in the parliament. The arrest happened as 3 German nationals were arrested on suspicion of working with China's Ministry of State Security. All of these are claims that China has dismissed as smears. That's it from me here in London. For now, Tanvi, back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Ollie, for all those updates. Ollie Barrett joining us from London. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. In some sad news, 2 Malaysian Navy helicopters collide in mid-air, 10 people killed. And a sea of devotees gathered in India's Madurai city for a glimpse of Lord Kalagar as part of the Chittirai festival.
India's southern state of Karnataka gets ready for polls in 2 phases. Congress-ruled state looks to checkmate BJP in the land of sandalwood. It's the ultimate battle of guarantees. What will resonate with the voters in battleground Karnataka? Watch the Great Indian Election at 8:30 p.m. IST and 1500 hours GMT, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. And next we get you up to speed with elections in India. As India is gearing up for the second phase of elections, political parties across the country have ramped up their election campaigning. Prime Minister and senior BJP leader Narendra Modi on Tuesday held a public meeting in Tongsavai Madhopur constituency in the western state of Rajasthan. Addressing the rally, Prime Minister said the BJP has shown what a stable and honest government could do in power in the last 10 years.
साथियों, एक स्थिर और ईमानदार सरकार देश के विकास के लिए क्या कुछ कर सकती है, ये पिछले 10 वर्षों में सबने देखा है। भारत आज दुनिया की सबसे तेजी से बढ़ती हुई बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था है।
Prime Minister Modi also addressed public meetings in Chhattisgarh's Janjgir and Mehsamand city, while Home Minister and senior BJP leader Amit Shah addressed a public meeting at North Bastar Kanked of Chhattisgarh and held a road show in West Bengal's Raiganj. The BJP leader will also hold public rallies in Maharashtra and Karnataka today. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also addressed a public gathering in eastern state of Bihar. Uttar Pradesh's Chief Minister and senior BJP leader Yogi Adityanath addressed a public meeting in Uttar Pradesh's Amroha. UP Chief Minister will also hold a roadshow in the state's western city of Meerut. BJP President JP Nadda addressed a public meeting in central state of Madhya Pradesh's Tikamgarh region today. Opposition's Congress party leader Sachin Pilot participated in the rally in support of AICC General Secretary K.C. Venugopal in the southern state of Kerala's Alappuzha city today. Bihar Chief Minister and Janata Dal United Party Chief Nitish Kumar addressed a public meeting in the state's Katihar city. Samajwadi Party National General Secretary Shivpal Singh Yadav and Mainpuri candidate Dimple Yadav also addressed a public meeting in Uttar Pradesh's Amroha. Bahujan Samaj Party Chief Mayawati also addressed a public meeting in Uttar Pradesh's Meerut city. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar delivered his remarks at the first ASEAN Future Forum on Tuesday. Speaking at the forum virtually, Dr. Jaishankar said that ASEAN is at the heart of India's Act East policy and is a crucial pillar in India's wider Indo-Pacific mission.
ASEAN is at the heart of our Act East policy and is a crucial pillar in India's wider Indo-Pacific vision. We support ASEAN unity, ASEAN centrality, and the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. India truly believes that a strong and unified ASEAN can play a constructive role in the emerging regional architecture of the Indo-Pacific. The synergy between India's Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, IPOI, and the ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific, AOIP, that is reflected in our ASEAN-India Leaders' Joint Statement, provides a strong framework for cooperation, including in addressing challenges to comprehensive security.
Staying in Asia, all 10 crew members aboard were killed as 2 Malaysian Navy choppers collided mid-air during a parade rehearsal. The Navy will be carrying out an investigation into the cause of the accident. The 2 aircraft involved in the crash were a maritime operations helicopter and a Fennec military chopper. North Korea conducted its first drills simulating a nuclear counterattack under its nuclear trigger management system in an exercise guided by its leader Kim Jong-un. The country fired several short-range ballistic missiles towards the sea off its east coast. Kim oversaw the drills involving troops in nuclear counterattack positions and firing artillery with mock nuclear warheads. The drills in North Korea took place days after the US and South Korea conducted joint military exercises. Officials of the 2 countries will meet in Hawaii this week for talks on sharing the cost of keeping American troops in South Korea. The current agreement is set to expire in 2025. More than 28,000 American troops are stationed in South Korea as part of efforts to deter nuclear-armed North Korea. And next, we take a look at what else is happening around the world. A group of young environmental activists in South Korea have brought a case to one of the country's highest courts, accusing the government of neglecting its duty to address climate change and protect its citizens. According to plaintiffs, this marks the first climate-related litigation in Asia. The petitioners include kids and infants. Bangladesh's meteorological department has extended the heat alert for 3 more days from Monday. The highest temperature soared up to 42.2 degrees Celsius in Chordanga on Sunday. As per reports, 4 people died from heat stroke in the last 3 days. The heat wave condition forced authorities to close all schools and colleges in the country till April 27th. In China, rescue operations were underway as heavy rainfall in southern regions caused rivers to flood in Guangdong province. Emergency supplies including food, water and other amenities were being provided. As of now, 41 emergency boats are in operation in the city areas that accommodate around 38,000 people. Devotees in India's southern Tamil Nadu state took part in a vibrant procession to celebrate the traditional festival of Chittirai. Thousands of devotees were seen pulling a decorated chariot and showering the idol of the Hindu god Kalagar, a manifestation of Lord Vishnu. So with that, it's a wrap in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show live from Washington DC at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. For those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.